And, of course, Representative Congressman Mike Turner has been in Congress about 20 years or so. He also is on the Intelligence Committee. And interestingly enough, I see on his resume that for a couple of years he was the president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, so he knows where the bodies are buried in Eastern Europe, etc. And Representative Mike Turner, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show. And Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. Bill, thank you so much for having me. And so, I'm appreciative of the fact that you continue to make certain people get information about what's going on and what's important out there, and I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you. Before we talk about the Ukraine, of course, you have the Roe versus Wade leak, which is a criminal act. I watch a senator, McConnell, on one of the morning shows talk about a criminality being conducted, but nonetheless, lies are being told about what this decision would be, what it would not be, and if Roe versus Wade is overturned either in this month or in June, it's going to be a circumstance where the states have to decide what to do with abortion. Abortion is still going to be legal in at least 25 to 30 states. What's your perspective on what the Supreme Court is likely to do? Then we'll talk about Ukraine.
I think just at this point, this is all just speculation. We don't know really what's happened at the court. Right. John Roberts said there's been no final decision.
Yep.
I think that this is politics as usual, just trying to divide America. And I think right now, we need to let the court do its work, and then we'll review the decision when it's handed down.
All right, let's talk about the Ukraine-related matters. And we got the inflation, we got the southern border, and you have experiences in Central Europe many do not have. And the more it looks as if Putin is going to declare war on the Ukraine, as if it hasn't happened yet, on or about May the 9th, which is the anniversary of the Russian victory and the end of World War II. It appears even more likely they're having more difficulty. Can you describe, from your position on the Intelligence Committee, why is the Russian army having so much difficulty subjugating, may I say, a great country with great patriots, but one in which its military wouldn't even be 1/10 of the power of NATO? Why is Russia having so many difficulties?
Well, you just said it, Bill. When you look at President Zelensky and his leadership, he has told the world that his nation is fighting for democracy, fighting for the self-determination of people, and that's not what the Russian troops are fighting for. I think they're demoralized. I think they're coming up against people who are fiercely fighting to protect their homeland. And I'm glad that this administration has finally stepped up to the plate to help provide them with lethal weapons that they can defend their nation. I think we're seeing the incredible outcomes of really very high-level technology that are in our weapons that are being provided to them as they go up against the Russian troops. And I think that's a surprise to Russia, and it's certainly a surprise to Vladimir Putin as to how great our weapon systems are and how vulnerable their military is.
Well, at this point, do you fear... I find myself as a normal American thinking back when I was a little boy in 1962 about duck and cover, get under a desk. And now I see that there's a fear that if, may I use the term if we win somehow in the Ukraine and the Russian army is obliterated, these switchblades, I know you know about the switchblades and about the other anti-tank and anti-ship missiles, they're unbelievable. To put up 500 switchblades and suddenly there's like no Russian army left. There's no tanks, there's no rocket launchers, there's nothing left. Do you fear a victory would cause Putin to use chemical or nuclear weapons?
Bill, when you look at what he did to Mariupol, where he killed innocent civilians, flattened the town, bombed residential areas, and really destroyed the town. Using a nuclear weapon is not a great moral leap from someone who's willing to do that. So I do think that we do need to take seriously the threat of a nuclear exchange or nuclear weapons being used by Russia. I've been very disappointed that President Biden has not stood up stronger to that threat. He has statements from Lavrov, foreign minister, certainly other spokespersons from Russia. You've got Putin himself standing up and saying, we have invincible weapons. It needs to be clear that Russia would pay a horrible price for using nuclear weapons, and especially as against anyone who is in NATO, which would he has himself gotten to the edge of openly threatening nations in NATO. This should be taken seriously, and it should be met strongly by this president.
You know, Representative Mike Turner, you talk about Lavrov. He says that Adolf Hitler was part Jewish. I'm watching this, and the guy did it with a straight face. They're also saying that Zelensky, who is Jewish, is a Nazi. So how's it possible that Adolf Hitler, the worst mass murderer of the 20th century, is Jewish, which is completely false, and that the Jewish leader of Ukraine is somehow a Nazi? And I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, how would you deal diplomatically with someone harboring those viewpoints? How do you have a basis of discussion or an agreement? How's that possible?
All right, it's not, and that just shows the depravity of really the Russian leadership. I mean, they're inhumane actions they're taking of killing innocent people in Ukraine. They're continuously threatening other nations. The statements that they are making that clearly show that they are not bound by any moral standards that the world operates by, or certainly that we operate by.
Well, you also have the circumstances happening in Aleppo, Syria, and in Grozny, and you were on the Intelligence Committee for about 20 years, and you're still there, and you have information that many of us do not. But according to the UN, the years of involvement in Syria and Aleppo resulted in 50,000 children being killed by the Russians, and also 500,000 civilians, included that number of the 50,000 kids. And they use chemical and biological sarin and other weapons on a regular basis. And what did the Obama administration do about that?
And nothing. So the thing that's so disturbing to me is that you have leaders of the Biden administration, former administration officials from the Obama administration, stepping forward and saying that they cannot believe this is happening. They cannot believe that Vladimir Putin would do this. He has a record of this. This is what he does. When he was threatening Ukraine, it was completely knowable that this is what he was going to do. I do think, though, that we're to a point where we are supplying Ukraine with some incredible tools that are necessary for them to be able to defend their country and for them to fight the evil that has descended upon them.
Do you see a circumstance? I watched on one of the morning shows. I know Adam Kinzinger, one of your fellow Republicans, though I don't think that applies so much to him anymore. But nonetheless, the congressman from Illinois has said on one of the morning shows, we have to get ready to militarily confront the Russians in Ukraine, that American soldiers, whether the Marines, 101st, 82nd Airborne, our armament is going to fight the Russians. Can you conceive of that happening without triggering a nuclear exchange?
Well, separate from nuclear initiation by Russia, I don't see that happening at all. I'm not for U.S. troops in Ukraine. I don't think that we need to be going into a conflict that is not ours. I think we need to bolster our NATO allies to make certain we don't get sucked into a conflict. Obviously, if Russia uses nuclear weapons, then that's a whole another gambit of a category of conflict that we have to start worrying about. The United States, our allies, and really what a pariah Vladimir Putin is. But no, I would disagree with him. I do not think that U.S. troops should be at all going into war in Ukraine.
Can you discuss, because many people don't understand the term tactical nuclear weapons as opposed to thermonuclear missiles. Can you describe what is a tactical nuclear weapon as opposed to a missile that flies over the oceans, over maybe the North Pole? What is a tactical nuclear weapons that on some of the morning talk shows it is discussed that Putin may use? What is that?
Right. So, there's a lot of the terms don't really help describe the difference. But usually when people are speaking of tactical, they're talking about short range. When they're talking about strategic, they're talking about long range. So an ICBM would be thought as strategic. A short range missile would be tactical. Now, the United States had previously been in a treaty with Russia to restrict short-range nuclear weapons. Russia breached that agreement and is now building up large stockpiles that threaten Europe. Those obviously are the most concerning because, one, Vladimir Putin has made open statements threatening his neighbors with them, but also he has spent a considerable amount of effort building up his inventory of those short-range nuclear weapons, and so it makes them much more of a threat.
This isn't good because I can't conceive how. I won't say we got ourselves in this situation. Vladimir Putin did this. He's the one that invaded. He had the troops beginning in March, 2 months after Biden took office. In March of last year, he started building up. And hardly anybody thought he would actually do it. But you, as opposed to others, thought that he would do it because of what he did in Aleppo, what he did in Grozny, that this is out of his playbook. He's now almost 70 years old, and there's speculation he has cancer or has some other ailment of one type or another. He wants to go out in a hail of glory. But what did you see about the buildup that caused you great concern that most did not see?
Really, just the enormous investment that he was making, and the fact that he was constantly undertaking exercises in which he would have a nuclear component. Before he invaded Ukraine, he actually conducted a nuclear weapons exercise with these so-called tactical or short-range nuclear weapons missiles. The fact that he has been so provocative, so aggressive, and I truly think that he hates the rest of Europe. It's not that he just sees, as he says sometimes, that Russia has sometimes not been respected. I think he really does. He hates democracy. He's an authoritarian thug, and so he sees this as the fact that people would be doing self-determination, that they would be a thriving democracy, as a threat to his vision for the world, and we just have to make certain that we counter it and that he does not win.